The mid-18th century was a time when the great steppe world of Central Asia once open, immense, and fiercely free found itself tightening under the advancing shadows of two empires, Russia from the west, and the Qin from the east. Historian Peter Perdue would call this the closing of the steppe, but for those who lived through it, it was not a chapter in a book. It was the collapse of a world. Among those swept into its turmoil was a Mongol boy named Haragai. Haragai was born into a people already pressured by forces far beyond their control. By the 1750s, the Jongas, a Mongolian-speaking people, and the last great nomadic power had been shattered by the Qin conquest. What followed was chaos. Old enemies sensed weakness. The Kazakhs, longtime rivals of the Jongas, began raiding the scattered survivors when Haragai was still only a child. One such raid tore his life apart. He remembered fire, shouting, horses, and the cold terror of hands pulling him away from everything he knew. His father Sarab, his mother, and four younger brothers were captured and taken away by the Kazakhs. Yet even in captivity, Haragai did not lose the resilience of his people. At the age of 12, he and his father managed a narrow escape, fleeing across the rugged mountains into Kyrgyz territory. They lived there for 3 years of poverty, hard labor, and constant uncertainty. Haragai watched his father's strength slowly fade, worn down by exile and grief. Surab died far from his homeland, leaving Haragai an orphan on foreign soil at only 15. But fate was not done testing him. In 1759, the Kyrgyz tribe Haragai was living within was attacked by a raiding party led by the Yiga leader, Burhan Aldin, alongside the Sarabagish Kyrgyz. Once again, Haragai's life was uprooted. He and other Mongol boys, along with 2 Mongol girls, were captured and sold southward, across the mountains, into Badakhshan in present-day Afghanistan. Their new owner was a man named Koya Nazir. Yet even in bondage, life offered small points of light. One of the Mongol girls, Tubsin, became Haragai's companion. Then his wife. They shared the same memories of smoke on the steppe, the same longing for a homeland they feared no longer existed. In whispered conversations late at night, they dreamed of their homeland. When Koya Nazir began to suspect their intentions, the two fled before he could act. They escaped westward to Kunduz, where they entered the service of its ruler, Mizrab Beg, and survived for 2 more years. But fate soon dragged them onward again. The land of Kunduz was required to send tributes to the Afghan ruler, Shahbaz Khan. Haragai and Tubsin became part of this tribute, carried to Kabul where they served for nearly 3 years at once. The Afghan ruler traveled to Lahore and brought the couple along on their return journey. Haragai and Tubsin seized their chance. They slipped away in the bustling streets of Lahore and hid among the poor, begging for 2 months simply to stay alive. Still, they persevered. From Lahore, they traveled to Kashmir, where for 5 years Haragai worked for a Yiga merchant named Niosbek. There, amid the rhythm of markets and the news carried by caravans, Haragai learned for the first time of the total Qin conquest of Jungaria and Kashaya lands now being reorganized and pacified under imperial rule, and later known as Xinjiang. The thought struck him deeply. The world he had escaped from was gone. But the world he might return to was perhaps safer than any he had known since childhood. And by then, Haragai and Tubsin had even more reason to hope. Their daughter, Janet, had been born in exile, small, bright-eyed, and unaware of the storms that had carried her parents across half of Asia with renewed purpose. Haragai led his little family eastward once more. They passed into Ladakh, where the local ruler offered them help. From there, they finally made their way to Yarkand, now under Qin rule. A Yaga merchant named Abdroman accompanied them, and it was together with him that Haragai presented himself before the Qin authorities. His tale of war, enslavement, escape, survival, and the long arc of fate astonished the imperial counselor. Word traveled quickly upward through the imperial bureaucracy. Soon, even the Qianlong emperor himself wished to meet this journeyman who had crossed empires and endured every twist of misfortune without breaking. In 1770, at the age of 29, Haragai stood in Beijing, the capital of the empire that had destroyed his people, yet now listened with fascination to the story of his life. He had been a refugee, a captive, a slave, a wanderer, a survivor, and now, unexpectedly, a witness to history. His journey embodied the upheavals of his era, the fall of the steppe, the reshaping of Central Asia, and the resilience of a single human spirit navigating the tides of fate.